welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 211, and today's date is November 9th, 2013, and the title of this episode is The Current Economic Collapse News brief for this Saturday. And let's get right into the economic collapse news. And what we are seeing right now, and I've mentioned this before, and they have started doing this, they are now giving loans out to subprime creditors at this time. It doesn't matter what your FICO score is. If you are breathing, you can get a car at this time. This will soon happen in the housing market, where they will not even check your credit. They will just give a mortgage to anyone. The reason for this, and we saw this prior to 2008, is that the entire system is on its last leg, and they are trying to prop it up by doing all of the same exact everything they did prior to 2008, they are reverting back to and doing the same thing, because we have to look around and we have to understand that the amount of people that are actually employed is way worse than it was in 2000, prior to 2008. We are now in the double digits if you're using the calculation prior to 1994. And even if you use the government calculation and you include some of the people that are underemployed and things like that in the calculation, they are up around 16%. And then we have to look at the youth unemployment, and that is around 20%, but if you use the calculation prior to 1994, we are approaching around 50%. So we can see what is happening right now. We are worse off right now than we were prior to 2008 when the economy came crashing down at that time. At that time, the Fed was not pumping in and creating money on the scale that they are doing it right now. And they understand this. They understand that this cannot continue for much longer, and they are using every trick in the book to keep this going as much as they possibly can until they can get the proper event to cover the entire thing up, because they do not want to be blamed for what is about to happen. And if we look around the U.S. and we look around everywhere, we see that most Americans are not purchasing homes at this time. We see mostly investment companies, hedge funds, all buying homes for cash instead of taking out mortgages, because, as we know, mortgages are declining. The mortgage applications are pending. Now, pending sales are declining. We're seeing furniture manufacturers going out of business. We see retail sales slowing down. And this is all because the economy is completely moving into a depression, and we are on the verge of a depression. Europe is right there on a depression, and in the United States, it's all manipulated, and the illusion and the smoke screen is out in front, so nobody can see what is actually going on, and they want all eyes on the stock market. And if you notice, the market continually rises. Gold was smacked down again, and they're doing this on purpose because they do not want anyone to know what is really happening at this time. And we see that, the amount of renters compared to the amount of people who actually own homes is rising. We are becoming a nation of renters. Okay, now Homeland Security is trying to fight where they are flying their drones. They do not want to divulge where they're actually putting the drones in the sky, and they're keeping it a secret. And right now the Department of Homeland Security is still battling the federal courts over releasing information that would show where it is flying drones in the United States. And of course they want to keep this a secret because they don't want people to know where they are, because these drones are meant to spy on everyone in the U.S. and eventually these drones will be armed. And DHS is saying if they divulge this information, it would, and if they divulge more of this information, it would compromise the effectiveness of the drone operations at this time. Now, there was another report that came out And we understand that cyber attacks, DHS has been warning us about this, and now DHS is also warning us about critical infrastructure on the GPS system, because what they're saying is the global positioning system is widely used in the nation's critical infrastructure. Government and industry are not prepared to address the risk of GPS disruptions. And what they're saying is that GPS is the backbone for the Federal Aviation Administration, for the next generation of air traffic control, for navigation for the Department of Transportation, and a lot of civilians use GPS in their systems, and they're saying that this is not protected. This is wide open for some type of an attack, and if this goes down, this could have horrific consequences on the airlines and ships and things like that. And right now, they are trying to look into this because a report has come out saying that this is wide open to attack. Okay, now in my report that I've done, maybe it was 2 or 3 reports ago, I discussed how the United States was supplying Japan with aerial drones. And what we know about Japan right now is they're trying to change their constitution in Article 9 so they're no longer a pacifist nation. And they want the ability to declare war if they so deem it's necessary. And right now there's a report out there saying that Asia now more prone to conflict than ever before. And the East China Sea may see the world's first war started by aerial drones. And this is very interesting because Japan is getting their first round of drones delivered to them. And this goes on to say that one way or another, this crisis will change the balance of power in East Asia. Either Japan will surrender territory it has controlled for a generation, or China will back down, becoming more resentful of today's international system than before. The U.S.-Japan alliance means that Washington needs to make it clear that its military support will be immediately forthcoming should China cross the line or goad Japan into using force to protect its territories. And we understand that the United States and Japan have been setting and preparing and having drills and getting ready for what is coming. And we understand that the United States is encircling China. And you can see this is all in preparation for what is about to come, which is World War III. And this is why we're seeing this right now. Now, we understand that the Grid X2, which is the power grid drill, is coming up this week. It's November 13th and 14th. And listen, this could be just another everyday drill that nothing happens. If we see, and I mentioned this before, if we see, and it's reported in the corporate media, if we see cyber attacks, hitting, some financial institutions, hitting like, Amazon, or the NASDAQ is going down again, things like that prior to the 13th, that is kind of a heads up that something is going on right now. Another indicator that we're seeing right now is that on the IRS site, they have reported that their service will be unavailable on the 9th to the 12th, a couple of days before this power grid drill. And this could be an indication that something is about to happen, or they could just be down for maintenance. But it's very interesting that they picked the same time period that they're giving us this warning. We also understand that NASDAQ has seen many, many glitches in the last couple of weeks. And we understand that Amazon, Vine, Netflix, and a lot of huge companies have seen different glitches in their systems. And just recently, Adobe has been hit by a cyber attack. And we can definitely see something occurring during this period. Now, if it doesn't happen, remember, this is potential. It's not something that will actually happen right at this time, because all the powers and all the different groups that are there, DHS, FEMA, TSA, all the different groups that join into this, there is a signal, a live, go live signal, or we're not going live at this time. If they get the go live signal, things will start to happen. But again, we have to remember that this is a potential false flag, because what we've seen in the past, we've seen false flags happen when there are drills, or we've seen false flags happen, maybe a month or two after the drills, because this is in preparation for what is coming. And we can see that everything that is happening now in the world, and it seems like, and it shows that they are trying to create the illusion that they want peace everywhere. And I'm talking about the central bankers, the globalists, the elite, whatever you want to call them. And it feels like everything is fine now. We're having peace with Iran. We have peace with Syria. They're destroying their chemical weapons. Everything is fine. The U.S. ships are leaving the Mediterranean. But it's strange that Russia is building up the presence of their ships in the Mediterranean. And they're making it seem like everything is fine. And this is what worries me. When things seem too calm, too good, it means that something is about to happen. And it looks like what they're trying to do is set the U.S. government to look like they are the peacekeepers at this time. Because what has happened since the Syrian chemical false flag, the entire world, plus all the spying they've done on all the countries, the entire world is looking at Washington right now as this warmongering, spying organization, and nobody trusts them anymore. So now what they're doing is they are using a different tactic. They are trying to show that they are peaceful, that they want peace. And this is kind of worrying me, because they are completely setting everyone up, because they realize their old tactic is not going to work anymore, because they saw the American people, the Congress, are no longer ready to go to war. The world is looking at Washington and realizes they've been spying on everyone. They realize that entire Syrian chemical attack was a complete lie and fabrication, and now they need to change the way they do business. It doesn't mean they are not going to continually do business the way they were before. They're just giving us a different illusion to make us feel like everything is fine. But we have to remember, they understand that this economic collapse is coming, and there's no way out of it. The Fed is actually stuck. Think about this for a second. If they taper at this time, what happens? Because they are the ones who are pumping in 85 billion, which there are reports that it's much, much more. It's like 120 billion or even more than that. And if they decide to stop this, what happens? Well, the money is flowing into the banks. The banks then are, because they're buying the toxic real estate, the banks then are putting it into the stock market and pumping it up. If the banks do not have the money to pump up the market, what happens? The market starts declining. And we saw this as soon as they mentioned the word taper, and that was their little litmus test to see what would happen, and the markets came down. So what we are seeing right now is that they cannot taper ever, and they realize this. Plus, they realize that there's not enough revenue in the country to pay off this debt and to keep the country going, because the amount of debt that is piling up right now is accelerating faster and faster. They realize the control in the Middle East is getting worse, because they're losing the control. We see Egypt is looking at Russia right now, making a deal. Saudi Arabia, very upset, making a deal with China. We see Israel upset with the U.S., and we see other Middle Eastern nations where they're completely losing control, and they cannot get into Syria or Iran to keep the dollar propped up right now. So this entire illusion that they are creating is just that. They still have to do the same thing they were doing before, or the dollar collapses. If the dollar collapses at this time, countries will sell their treasury bonds, which means the Fed will have to buy them. Foreclosures will increase. Dollars will flood back to the U.S., and everyone will look at the government and the Fed and blame them because they're the ones who are telling us we are recovering. So how would they possibly get out of this? The only way to do it is to blame it on another country and to get a war started. And this is where they are going with it. They will, without a doubt, create a false flag in the United States to get the war started. It will be a multi-pronged type of an attack. It will be a cyber attack that will hit the power grid, hit the financial institutions. It will be most likely, because we saw an intel report about Assad hiding their chemical weapons, and this is a perfect setup for a chemical false flag to blame it on Syria. And they can come out and say, listen, we went along with Russia. We did what they had. We did what they said. They were destroying the chemicals, but Assad put chemical weapons, and he took them out and he hit them, and he decided, because what we did, he decided to use them on the United States. And this will allow the American people to see what is going on. It will allow them to say, hey, let's go to war. I can't believe this guy did it. We gave them all the chances. We gave them all these chances, and it didn't work. And another scenario is Iran. They are trying to have, and they're in peace talks right now over the nuclear weapons. Iran is not giving up anything, but they're going along with the peace talks. And what they can say is, listen, we were, telling them, do what you've been doing. We will ease the sanctions. We will make it easier for you. And we already know that they are looking to join the BRIC nations, so the sanctions really don't mean anything at this time. And the United States, the central bankers can say, listen, we were trying to make peace, and what they did was they decided to use one of their nuclear weapons, which they've been talking about for over 30 years, on the U.S., and now we have to go to war. And we can see how this would be, and how this would cover up the entire collapse. And we can see this actually happening. Now, we understand that right now there is no cap on the debt ceiling. They're spending wildly like there's no tomorrow. And come February, they're back into the same exact thing. They need to discuss this debt ceiling. But what is going to happen in February? Well, they're going to have the same exact discussion. It's going to be the same it can never change. So they need to do something before that time period, and we will definitely see something build up at this time. Now, will it happen at the end of this year? Could be. Could it happen the beginning of January? Most likely. So listen, we need to be prepared. We need to be ready, because you do not want to be, awoken one morning and say, hey, how come my lights don't turn on? And you try everything. You try calling people, nothing. You use your battery power radio. You're listening, and you hear like half the East Coast is out of power. Then you start saying to yourself, holy, this is coming true. Because just people, what you should do is run through a scenario in your home. Shut the power down. See how it would be for one day without power. For those people who have never lost power for more than one day, do it 2 days. See how how you could survive this. I was in the Northeast power outage, and where I lived, it was out for 3 days. And let me tell you, that was tough. So all I can say is it's better to be prepared than to be unprepared. Because if you are prepared and you have food and you have water and you have all your supplies, the worst thing that happens is nothing happens. But you can then use those supplies because nothing happened and you didn't lose any money. If you're unprepared and you don't have cash in the house, you don't have food, you don't have toiletries, you don't have medicine, now you're scrambling. Now you're looking to get prepared, but it's too late. Listen, everyone, thanks for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.